Right on. Recovered alcoholic. My name's Tony. I'd like to welcome everybody to Tuesday Night Big Book Study Workshop with a program of recovery laid out by the first 100 men and women. How we open this meeting is third step prayer. What's the first requirement in making this thing work? God. Grant me the serenity. Well, bombs, eh? That's what you get for thinking. What's the first requirement in making this thing work? God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, so that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those that would help. Thy power, thy love, and thy way of life, may I do thy will always. That's what happens when you start thinking, eh? Nobody prone to thinking here, eh? We're awesome. Well, we're going to probably talk about some things tonight that a lot of you kind of either have heard, haven't heard, or ignored, or not doing yet. How many people here struggle with their thinking? What do you think that's associated with? Well, it's usually in the direct line. So we're going to look at 11, but let's go backwards through the steps. Okay, so step 11 is suggesting what? That there's a connection between us and a power greater than ourselves, right? So if you look at step 11 on the wall, what does it say? Sought through prayer and meditation to conscious conduct, praying, right? As God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of and the power to carry that out. Most of us are praying for knowledge of our will and the power for Him to carry it out. Is there a difference in those? Is there a difference in those two statements? How many people do a lot of thinking here and ask God to carry out their wishes? That's what we read it, right? We think it's asking about things, not praying about things. Is there a difference between seeking counsel about things and praying for things? It's praying about things, not for things. Big difference. Most of us pray for things. Any negotiators here? How many people negotiate with God on a constant basis? How many people get themselves in the jackpot and then ask God why they're there again? Why are you doing this to me? What lesson am I supposed to learn in this? How many people have been there? That's always a good one, right? What am I supposed to learn? Listen, obviously, right? So, as we go through this process, what's the basis of our dilemma? Well, but lack of power, right? How many people have tried to change their life here on a consistent basis? So how many people keep on ending up in spots that they don't want to end up in? Not only in spots, but emotionally, mentally. How many people end up in those places within inside of themselves that take way too much time? And they can't seem to escape and all that stuff. So it's usually generated with that idea of lack of power. So when we go through the forced, so lack of power is our dilemma. Where and how are we to find this power that creates the change? Yeah, within, but where's the recipe? That's exactly what this book is about. So it tells me kind of like the more I get access to this power, the more I get to experience the psychic change or spiritual experience. They talk about in the back of the book, right? They talk about what usually takes place in a few months. Not a few days, a few months. Why do they put that kind of time limit on? Anybody ever notice that? In the spiritual appendix, they say what usually takes place in a few months seldom will take place in a few years by self-discipline. It means it would take me years to bring about this thing that through me trying on my own effort that can be achieved in a couple months by doing this recipe. But why can't I make it a couple years? Like, because I have an illness of alcoholism. That needs to be removed before I can start looking at the real problem, and that's my spiritual condition, right? Because the more spiritually fit I am, the less I suffer from who? Myself. Right? Because what did I used to use in order to consolidate myself? Alcohol. Alcohol was the solution to me. Anybody else here like that? Remember, Bill, people were jumping from high finance towers? He said that disgusted me. Where did he go? Back to the bar. Anybody of that thinking here? Right? Boss gives you hell? Where are you going? To the bar. Not where you're going, but I mean, anybody have a problem? You sit in the bar long enough, that problem goes away. You ever notice that? And our mentality is, a lot of us, we get here and say, I lost everything. Everything's still in place. Everything's still there. We're the ones separated from it. Anybody say, I lost my family? Well, you don't know where they are? You know exactly where they are. You're the one separated from them. Relationships, failed relationships, our position in society, on and on and on. What has created the separation from me and the world around me? So it's interesting when you start looking at it that way. So when you kind of say, I'm the orchestrator of all my reality, that kind of sucks, eh? Because who are we are sure more to blame? Other people. If people would only do as I wish. Anybody? Anybody have a list of things people need to work on? Well, all would be utopia if these people just get their shit together. They just, why are the police always bothering me? Because you're a criminal. You know, since I sobered up, they haven't been bothering me. Kind of weird. Really weird. They don't pull me over anymore. There's no surveillance units in front of my place. I mean, it's kind of weird, right? Like, I remember this one time, I didn't catch on, right? There was a construction crew outside of my place for like 2 months. Anyways, catch on to that later. Taking a long time to fix that little pothole. So we go through, and when we finish, if we go to 76, I'm going to give you some new ideas here that's kind of like, I know it's going to cause you problems because I was talking to Joe about it, nearly had an aneurysm. Okay. So I know you guys are going to stop listening about any minute now. Okay, so we just finished our 5. And we've seen what the whole purpose of the process thus far was to get this relationship where it's personal to me, where I'm able to acknowledge this thing that's happening inside of me. I got enough self out of the way where I kind of understand this energy field, the sick, whatever you want to call it, within, this life force within me. We kind of all agree, who's done their 5th, that it becomes more prevalent. I'm more governed by this energy within inside of me, where before it was crippled by the resentment, the fears, and the harms, and the pains, and all that stuff. So it lightens the load, and I kind of become more aware of that energy that makes me a human being. Our more religious member call it God consciousness, but that thing that used to talk, that thing that talks to me from in here, that quiets this thing up here. Because when this thing up here is talking, I can't hear what this thing is saying. And when I'm in tune to this thing down here, which our consciousness, this thing's not making any noise. And when you kind of tune into that, it's kind of pretty cool. Right? That's why they talk about we can go at home and be at ease for an hour. Quiet for an hour. When was the last time you sat quietly for an hour? And be at perfect peace and ease. That's pretty wild. When I went through, and I remember that level of serenity, Bill was alarmed by that. Like, you're the right kind of, when you're alarmed by serenity. What's that noise? There isn't any. Oh my God, there's something wrong. And you got to phone somebody to say, what's going on with you? I don't know. I'm feeling really good. Oh no. Right? Remember in Bill's story? He phoned his friend listened to him and kind of go, well, there's something going on with you. You better hang on. How many people would like to be that disturbed by their peace and happiness that you need to phone somebody to get confirmation that you haven't lost your mind? That would be not too bad of a, huh? Anybody ever been on a bad trip here? Phone a friend? Try to talk you down? This is on an awesome trip, and they're saying stay on it. Anyways, you get the later. Okay. So returning home. Let's go from there. On page 75. and we'll go into my theme here. You'll see there's a building block and an idea here.
Katie, alcoholic. Bottom of 75. Returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour. Carefully reviewing what we have done, we thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know him better.
So if you could be quiet for an hour, that means you're at peace. There's no connection to the future, and you're not carrying nothing from your past. You're at peace. Because most of our conflict, if you look at today, and it was mentioned earlier, has to do with the future or the past. One or the other. Because in this moment, usually there isn't much. In this moment, right now, there's no conflict. Unless you got a tack sticking through your shoe, and that's something different. But you understand, like, if you're able to be in this moment and take care of, be able to look after this moment and be here mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and then address life as it started presenting itself, that's pretty cool. Isn't it? That means all the tires, the car's fixed, and you're able to continue on life's highway. But if you got one tire that's not working right and the other brake isn't working, it hasn't been through the repair shop yet. It has all these problems. Anybody ever driving a car that has problems? You're just praying all the time. The lights are coming on. Come on, come on. Anybody ever have one of those cars? Come on. Everybody ever steal one of those kind of cars? Come on. You're acutely aware of the problem that exists with the car. And you're in constant tension. And if you're anybody been in those kind of cars, or the tranny starts slipping and this starts slipping and the problem starts, your anxiety level goes through the roof as the result of an awareness that's happening with the car. Anybody got that identification? Now you have the exact same awareness with you, but you're not acutely aware of it. There's something that has you on high alert. There's something that has you in panic mode. There's something that has you instinct-based, but you're not too sure what it is because you're not able to observe it the same way you are a car and assess it. So by this time, you've done that. You've gone through it. You know exactly about the stock and trade. You know exactly what makes you tick and how you operate. You know exactly what the stock and trade is. There's no secrets. Everything's out in the open. You know that flashing indicator light? You know what it is now. You ain't quite right. Black tape won't work on it. Just because you cover the light doesn't mean the problem's gone away. I don't know if anyhow, so you're at peace now. That's pretty cool, right? You just done 5 steps. And anybody who I've ever seen gone through this, and if you did a kind of a survey through the fellowship, people who've done it this way and could show you what they've done, everybody says the same thing. Everybody. People who have a different experience have done it a different way. Pretty cool, right? Now it doesn't say it stays like that, does it? No. Otherwise it'd be over. Said, good luck, you're good now. Now they're saying, now we're going to revisit what the real problem is, but we're going to ease you into that.
We thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know him better. Taking this book down from our shelf, we turn to the page which contains the 12 steps. Carefully reading the first 5 proposals, we ask if we have omitted anything, for we are building an arch through which we shall walk a free man at last.
Where's the last time they talked about this idea of an arch? It was on page 62, 63. Was this transition of the 2 different experiences. They talk about the human condition from page 60 to 62, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of the human condition because we don't know how to process life successfully. We're carriers. We hang on to resentment, fear. We're crippled because we start warping our minds through alcohol abuse and drug abuse. We're a little more warped than a person who hasn't subjected themselves to alcoholism. Does that kind of make sense? So we're a normal person at 12 and 13, you learn how to deal with life. We are trying to avoid life. Anybody go to great lengths to avoid life here? And when we found alcohol, how many people went, oh yeah, where you been? And then all our concentration becomes on the pursuit of happiness. Would you like ice with that? Of course I would. Okay.
Is our work solid so far? Are the stones properly in place? Have we skimped on the cement put into the foundation? Have we tried to make mortar without sand?
So they're talking about the spiritual structure that they mentioned in We Agnostics. Before this, I was governed by certain instincts and ideas. Everything that I've experienced is governing me and how my response, my reaction, and my thinking to life. Now they say I'm in a spiritual structure, an energy structure. If you want to look at it that way, I'm more governed by the energy that happens inside of me. Before, I was governed by energy too, but it was instinct-based energy, meaning fight or flight all the time, high alert and constant tension. Nobody like that in this room. Anybody? I don't know when it's going to happen, but I'm ready. My wife went to me. She came to a couple of them. She goes, "You people are really intense." I said, "No, we call that serenity." We're just ready. We don't know when it's going to happen, but we're ready. We see people running in a meeting. We just join them. What's going on? Nothing. Late for the bus. Oh, okay. So the structure, the idea is like this. If this room was our consciousness, before our exit was this exit, and it caused trapped energy on that side of the door, we'd be observers, but we'd still be stuck on the same floor. Through this process, we have a new arch. That exit, where it says, have a new arch where we go outside and we're in freedom. We're absent of the old structure and we're in absent. Does that kind of make sense? If this building was on fire, I'd still be in trouble on that side of the door. Does that kind of make sense? But if I followed the instruction and I stood on the outside on the street as an observer looking in, I'd be safer. And that's what they talk about the arch. They're kind of talking about, I understand what an instinct-based life looks like, and I understand what a spiritual-based life looks like, and I determine. But I can't just determine it by thinking it. What I need to do is experience the spiritual energy level that allows me to live on this side. Right? You ever see those cylinders where you fill one up and the other one empties and you fill? And that's like us. When we're instinct-based, our spiritual life is really, really low. And we spend time thinking because we're part Neanderthal. Since the beginning of time, we've always taught fear, gather, conquer, a high state of alert. Look at any animal. They're always on a high state of alert. That's part of their DNA, part of their instinctual base. You walk up to a cat that's relaxing, go, boo, boom, thing stuck to the roof, right? Same with my dog. Dog's relaxing. I got Adobe. He's relaxed, everything. But his ear's always like, and you hear stuff that I can't even hear. His head pops up and goes, I go, what's going on? He goes, nothing, but I'm ready. And that's like us, isn't it? It's not, right? And sounds, and so he's a rescue dog, so sounds, smells, and situations either have him reacting to today or something that happened to him before I got a hold of him. Right? And like when we go, he just starts shaking uncontrollably. So something traumatized. So what we do is we work him through it. It may sound kind of weird. We acknowledge it. So now he's starting to have a new experience. So the other sound that used to drive him nuts was the sound of the chain. Like we have a choke off, put it on the doorknob, and it straightens out. I don't know how, and makes that sound. And he would just freak. So I do that every night now. I put it on the door, and I get him to relax, to be in the moment, and know his comfort. So now that sound doesn't freak him out anymore. He acknowledges it, but it no longer governs him. Does that kind of make sense? So he's overriding his own instincts. And what allows him to do that is his comfortability in the situation. So if we look at our human trait, the more spiritually fit I am, the less responsive I am to the world around me. And in the fourth step, they talk about mastering resentment, matching calamity with serenity. That means fear has come to the surface, but I'm able to acknowledge it and pause. So I get my third instinct back where I've never been able to have that before. Before I was governed by two instincts, fight or flight. Now I have the pause instinct, the ability to go. But in order to do that, you need to be able to govern how your energy shifts within inside of you. Am I talking? People kind of, yeah? So here they're saying, I have the doorway now to the experience I want to experience. And we'll govern that more in step 11, right? Because I need to harness this thing. If I don't harness it without realizing it, self will take over again. And when self takes over again, it'll be demonstrated in my over-concentration on people, places, and things. And I become instinct-based again. I become consumed with my thinking. So that's an indicator that what's starting to shift. My spiritual condition. So this is what they're trying to teach me. Does that kind of make sense? But I need to experience it to understand it. If you've never experienced it, this sounds like a bunch of, like, these people have lost their mind when they talk to me about it when I went through it. Once I experienced it, I went, wow. Once Bill experienced it, he kind of went, wow. But did he keep it? Do we keep it? That's the funny part. So now we're going to continue.
Okay, top of 76. If we can answer to our satisfaction, then we look at step 6. We have emphasized willingness as being indispensable.
Sorry. So when you're sitting there for an hour, what you're doing is you're checking, did I leave anything out? Did I not talk about, or did I not reveal, or did I not bring to the surface something that has happened? Am I still keeping something to myself? And the warning of that is we're going to get loaded if we do, because we cut ourselves off from this energy, God, spirit, whatever you want to call it, this life force within inside of us. These things have been blocking us and eating our lunch. Did I bring this one thing that I never said I'd never tell anybody? Did I bring it to the surface? Is it on the table? Is there anything in hiding still? Or is it all on the table? It doesn't mean I have to tell the whole world. The one person knows all about me. In my case, there was 2, because I had to look for a closed-mouth friend for certain things because of statute of limitations back when I got sober. So I found somebody that understood my story and who wouldn't be affected by it. So a lot of people seek me out for that very same reason. They'll tell somebody 90% of their story, but they'll tell me certain parts of their story because I'm unaffected by it. Does that kind of make sense? So by the time I finished this, I was emotionally exhausted and I was free from everything. Everything for the first time in my life was on the table. There was nothing still left behind. And when I did the 5th, when I did that hour, your conscience will tell you how many people did the 5th step, left something out, and your conscience went, excuse me. Excuse me. You go, shh, shh, shh. No, excuse me. And that's what happens because you don't have a whole riot of things anymore. You have item things, not a whole busload of things. There's a big difference. It's pretty freeing. We'll start reading at the top again.
At the very top. If we can answer to our satisfaction, then we look at step 6. We have emphasized willingness as being indispensable. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things we have admitted are objectionable?
What are the things that are objectionable? Interesting, right? If I'm bringing something to God at this stage, but I just did my 4 and my 5. Right? And I see that my character defects are directly proportionate to my spiritual condition. So if I'm spiritually right, am I suffering from my character defects? No. So that's why it talks about when I did my 4, this is what an unspiritual or undirected spiritual person that suffers from spiritual malady looks like. My human condition. My spirit is ill, not God's spirit is ill. I have the one that's maladjusted, disconnected. But we need to explain it in such a way that makes sense, right? So we became spiritually ill, meaning we're more separated from ourselves. We become ill from the separation. Our spirit's not actually ill. Again, but it's too technical to get into that, right? As we get more connected to this life force, the more rejuvenated we become. Does that kind of make sense? So what are the things here that I'd still be hanging on to? Yeah. How about, well, it's not so much character defects because character defects are associated with something. Fear. Fear. Resentment. Harms. Anybody carry stuff from what people have done to them? Some real... There's been some pretty shitty things that happened to a lot of us. Now you won't tell me I'm not still going to carry stuff? Oh, yeah. But I know what they are, and I don't want them eating my lunch. So I acknowledge them. these things are still the things I deal with. Is like, real fast story. My dad nearly killed me when I was a kid, and I suffered a lot of stuff as a result of the hospital. Like, long story. So I was an infant in a blackout and nearly killed me. And I suffered a lot of trauma from that incident. Like, my one eye, I'm losing sight I had to get surgery. Like, on and on and on. I got locked up. Like, long story. So when I found out what he did to me when I was 23, I looked at the life he robbed me from the atrocity that he did to me when I was a kid. So, like, when I used to get drunk, I used to think about blowing his brains out. Like, I went through the army, got a sniper, kind of the idea of how many times I fantasized about how him going to work with a high-powered rifle with a scope on it. I'm the only one that thinks like that in this room, right?
Yeah, just you.
But you see how this thing from the pain, regardless of how the story looks like, that's how I developed this story in my mind. Right? And then it would I'd get away from it, get sober, and then I'd push that down and not deal. And so when I went through my 4 here and I did my 5 or 6, and then I'd see my dad, when I was spiritually well, I never thought of that. When I wasn't spiritually well, it'd start coming back to mind. And so when my dad was dying of cancer, he was coming up to his 40th AA birthday. And so I watched him for 2 weeks at that time, and I was getting drained. I was really getting drained. I was watching him 24/7. But before he ended up in a vegetative state, he said something to me of the indication of violence. And I turned to him and I said, "Would you like to try me now? I'm not a kid." And I kind of, whoa. And I acknowledged and I asked his forgiveness at that moment. Like, I asked his forgiveness. Like, it was a very emotional situation. But I couldn't believe how it just arised itself out of nowhere. And at this time, I was I was probably 23 years sober. Step 6. Right? And so what that means is you carry it into 11 and you become aware of these things. And when they start showing up again, that's an indicator that my spiritual condition's starting to slide. I don't have the access to power. I'm becoming instinct-based, and you're going to pay again. Anybody ever tell somebody they forgive them here? And remind them how many times you forgive them? Yeah. You haven't forgiven them. Every time you bring something up again that has to do with the past, is your spiritual condition sliding again. Because when you forgive somebody, it's like when I get people to redo their 4s. If there's nothing on their 4, there's nothing on their 4. If everything still keeps coming up, anybody ever do more than 1 4 here? And a person keeps coming up again? Or a situation keeps coming up again? Or you're revisiting? What step is that? Because once you do step 4 and you looked at the resentment, right? You looked at the resentment, you've talked about it in your 5, and it's still present after you do your 5. Is it a 4-step item or is it a 6-step item?
6.
Now, this is a whole new way of looking at it, right? I'm still carrying, right? So as God remove this thing that I'm carrying. On the 5th step, it says God can remove all these things that are blocking me, but obviously I'm still carrying something. There's a connection or a tie to it, some emotional energy still tied to it. And I don't know what they all are. What will happen as I go through life, there will be revealed to me these things I still carry. Anybody getting things revealed to them?
Yeah.
But I dealt with this. Obviously not. No, sorry. Okay. Well, you did, but you're still carrying it, right? And some of it, hopefully, it gets bite-sized enough that it doesn't affect you on a constant basis. That when you have the energy of it, you don't involve other people. Okay?
Okay. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things we've admitted are objectionable? Can he now take them all, every one? If we still cling to something, we will not let go. We ask God to help us be willing.
So, any carriers here?
Yes.
We do. You hear people, let it go. We're incapable of letting it go. We're carriers. If you end up in a worse situation, get an alcoholic beside you. He'll carry you farther than anybody else will. They'll leave you behind. They'll carry you farther than anybody else would. Because what happens is, when we say that bumper sticker sobriety, and we say it, we're kind of real flippant with it. But the truth is, this stuff is at a subconscious level, and we don't know until it presents itself again, because we're masters at the art of delusion. Self-delusion. Because we had to spend years conditioning ourselves to be unaware of the life around us. Anybody? Come on.
Yeah.
Anybody look at your life and go, holy shit? And you go, what? Anybody have a moment where they wake up and go, oh my God, how did I get here? I can't believe I got here. And you have a moment, you look at your life like other people see your life, and it horrifies you. And a couple more beers, that thought goes away again. You know it's a short window. You either get help or that feeling, don't move. Bang, 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 put it back. Okay, good. You're back in the delusion of self again. Anybody?
Yeah.
And then you need another interval of life getting your attention. That's all step 6 stuff now. Because you'll be in that position again. Life getting your attention again. How did I get here? How's this happening? I'm still carrying certain ideas, certain emotional ties, or certain things that need to be addressed on a different level that we're going to look at in 11, okay? So now we finished that thought of God is going to take these, but we're willing to have God take these things. We're aware of them, or we become aware of them, and as life goes on, you'll become, oh, this is step 6 stuff. God, can you take it? Right? That will be continuous, because our character defects is associated with our spiritual condition. If I'm spiritually off, then it starts exhibiting itself by I become instinct-based again, and based on my instincts, I become selfish, inconsiderate, dishonest, and self-seeking. Why? Because there's a threat to one of my basic instincts. And if there's a threat to one of my basic instincts, that means I'm spiritually depleted. And I'm becoming instinct-based again. I got that out of my 4 and 5. If I don't want to become instinct-based again, that means I need to find a spiritual path. The promises talk about that. I have a new experience as the result of my relationship with source, power, or energy, whatever you want to call it. Our more religious members call it God. Right? And that's what all of us agree on who've done this. Anybody who's done it, we agree. And ask anybody who gets off track, right? They get off track, and we talk about, no, it's more, no, it's not. No, but you don't know. Yeah, we do understand. No. Wait a minute. When you were doing this, were you feeling really good? Yes. When you stopped doing this, did you start feeling like shit? Well, yes. Are you doing this yet? No. How you feeling? Like shit. But you don't understand. That's the step 6 stuff again. It's kind of like, and the key to that shift is, a couple of people are, you talking about me? I'm talking about all of us.
Sitting here tonight?
Yeah, that way you can't get out of here. I'm talking about all of us. I'm talking about me. I'm sharing my experience, strength, and hope with this. Like, we're all the same. We're not cut from a different cloth. Right? And if you need outside help, get outside help. I got outside help for a lot of this stuff. The stuff I still carry. Because you're not going to be free of it until you do it. Some shit just needs to go to the dry cleaner. Sorry. Chapter tag. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, read the prayer.
Read the prayer.
Ready, this is why I'm here. Okay. When ready, we say something like this: My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me.
So they started a new thought. People go, 6 and 7. Well, that 12 and 12, they should punk that right out of the fellowship. Sorry, did I say that out loud? Is because what happens is our first obsession is ourselves. Oh, I need to work on this more. I need to be more involved. I need me. Oh my God, here we go. Here they're saying it's not me, it's my relationship. But I want to be more involved than I need to be. That's why it's only 2 paragraphs. The first paragraph, what am I still carrying? I know a lot of people are going to listen to this and kind of go, because we've made this big, huge drop the rock. Let's really look at ourselves. Let's go over this again. Oh, my God, let's go over it again. No, wait, let's go over it again. Like, what's your problem? You. What are you focusing on? You. How are you feeling? Ooh. So it's like, now it reconfirms, what is this about? It's about my relationship that I agreed necessary in step 2 to relieve me of me. There's no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. No, like I'm always going to have me stuck on me if it's me doing it. But if I feel free from this thing, that means there's source. It's like when these lights are on, you know they're on. You're not stumbling around in the dark. When they're off, you know they're off. And that's kind of like this process here. This kind of saying, look, you can't do this stuff. You acknowledge you're hanging on to it. Now, okay, let's move on, right? So we'll read that again. When ready, it's a new thing about working on the future and the present and not bringing the past in anymore. When ready. Does that kind of mean I need to be ready for something, to re-acknowledge something? I need to re-acknowledge something because self wants to take over. Anybody have the problem with self here? Any overthinkers here? Any overthinkers, underachievers? I'd like to meet you today, but I got to really think. Let's go over this again. Okay. Turn off the phone. Oh no, it's that person calling me again. They may talk about the solution. Sorry.
Okay, when ready, we say something like this. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad.
Why do they say that, good and bad? Because most people, when they talk about step 6 and 7, talk about the bad. Here they're saying good and bad. You're reconfirming step 3. What you're doing is reconfirming step 3 here. My Creator, I'm willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. Because when I'm concentrating on the bad, who am I concentrating on? When I'm concentrating on the good, who am I concentrating on? What's my favorite topic? I like this step. Good and bad. But there's 3 sides to a coin. Here they're saying, we're not going to concentrate on either side. We're going to concentrate on the skinny side. And that means I'm not affected. It doesn't obscure my vision. You ever see a coin? You turn it sideways, it becomes thin. But if you turn it one way, the closer you hold it to your eye, the more it blocks your view. So if you have self, how good self is on one eye and how bad self is on the other eye, you're not seeing too well. You got 2 coins. But if you turn those coins sideways, you could still see. And that's what this step's kind of saying. I can still see, but I'm still going to be afflicted with these 2 things. But I know where my focus needs to be. Right? Because there's certain indicators here. Okay.
I pray that you now remove from me every single defective character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows.
So, if my defective character that stands in the way, when are they talking about? I now pray, which should get you into step 11. I now pray that what? You remove from me every single defective character that
stands in the way
of my
usefulness
to
you and my fellows.
You and my fellows, reconfirming my relationship. Because on page 63 says, he'll provide all that I need if I keep close to him and perform his work well. This whole thing is about the relationship. It's not about me working on me. Right? Just good. So, now it asks me to do what?
Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding.
What step does that sound like? 3 and 11. Grant me strength to improve my conscience. So it all becomes encumbersome, but they need us to look at things in a certain way. So who's in charge of the way my life's going to turn out and what lies ahead of me? So what's my job is to see that relationship was right, and he'll provide all that I need. I'll trust that the greater good will come out of every situation, even though it doesn't look that way. Like I've had situations that look really bad that turned out really good. I don't know what works is the best for me. I've prayed for things so much that God gave them to me, and I prayed for him to take them back. Like I'm a parent, right? He's the father of his children. Sometimes my kids, and part of me goes, I know I shouldn't. Because I give it to them. I know I shouldn't have did it, and everybody gives me shit for doing it. Like, you know, it was only a .22 caliber rifle. I don't know. She was 6. I don't know. No, I'm just joking. I grew up with guns. I mean, what the hell's the big deal? So anyways, just joking. Take that off the record. But so it reconfirms that my job is my relate, and then they confirm that on page 77. What do they say up there? Our real purpose. Oh, so later you could read on the rest of 76, reconfirms what 6 and 7 is about. It says, now we go out to clear out the wreckage that we've accumulated on our efforts to live on self-will. So we see that God didn't orchestrate these things. It's the absence of God that created this thing. Nothing happens in God's world by mistake. We know why these things happen now, and it wasn't God doing it to you. It was the absence of God that, right? Isn't that not true? Yeah, because it'd be pretty crappy right now to go make amends to people and say, well, I'm sorry about your luck, but I guess God had other plans for you. And you're welcome.
Nothing happens in God's world by mistake.
So we see what the mistake is. Your conduct absent of spiritual principles and the inability to stop yourself from doing those things. Because if you could have stopped yourself from doing those things, would they have been on your 4th? So this is self. Perpetuating self that causes self the problem, and our inability to see that, driven by 100 forms of fear and self-delusion. 100 forms of it. It's the human race. But we're a little more driven by it because we're governed by a warped thinking. We've warped our thinking and destructive, right, in our bodies and life, and we've created this delusion. So here they're saying a lot of that's subsided. I reconfirm my decision here. And what does it say at the top here?
Third line, our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us.
You know what word people take out when they talk about that, what our real purpose is? They say is to be of maximum service to God and the people around us. How many people hear it that way? It's to fit ourselves. It takes effort. Because just because you've gone through this doesn't mean your brain doesn't stop talking to you. I was at home with the dog. I live in Langley. I got a job out in Langley. It's an hour drive in rush hour. Part of me says, well, just stay home tonight. Relax. You've been doing this over 20 years now. This big book study. You're 30 years sober. Why you going to need to go do that again? Another part of me says, you're right. And then the other part of me says, you think you could afford it? Honey, talk to you later. Because I don't know what I could afford to stop doing, right, and continue to have the life that I have. I don't know what part of the recipe, so to fit ourselves, meaning effort and time. And so on the 7th, we need people to help with the phone shift, effort and time. And you can see our friend over here, and he'll sign you up. We need how many people?
2 people.
2 people. And that's mind-blowing. For the size of our fellowship, we have struggled getting people to do the phone. It's kind of mind-boggling that everybody talks about how spiritual they are. Yeah, we
I
can
need
see
2
that.
more people, too, for this Friday. 5
It's kind of
10.
mind-boggling, right?
Yeah.
If our job is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people around us, we're still trying to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to ourselves. So that's first stage recovery. First stage recovery is still about who? Us. Second stage recovery is I see the benefit of what I get out of this, and we're his agents. Meaning, that means when I get this inkling or somebody asks me to be somewhere and I could be somewhere and it doesn't interfere with my responsibilities, I be there because God has something lined up. I don't know what that is. It's either to my betterment or somebody else's betterment. If I'm trusting and relying on God, God works through people, places, and things. You just start getting used to saying yes. You just start, and you watch your life will turn into something beyond anything you could ever imagine. Over 20 years ago, something said, start this big book study here on Friday night. But. Start this big book study, but. Start it here. Grab your 4 or 5 sponsees, take them through. They'll take someone else through. 20 years later, it's the biggest big book workshop in Canada. And I argued with the idea. My wife, the most gorgeous, wonderful woman in my entire life that I've ever met, I nearly talked myself out of it. How many people talk themselves out of happiness here? That started with no. You got practice, yes. So to fit ourselves, I want to get to this here. So when we go to 11, so it reconfirms this thing. So if you go to 85, we've covered this whole thing. Like we start saying, oh, it's about 10, 11, and 12. Nowhere does it say that. It doesn't say that anywhere. But we like it because we like the mechanics. Well, if we can get them doing 10, then maybe they'll get to 11, and hopefully they might do 12. Most people get to 10 and don't move past that because they get focused on self. They're building their relationship with self. And then they brought out the 12 and 12, which reconfirms self-discovery. And when you think there's a problem, you bring God into it, and then you go talk to somebody. But this says, this thought brings us to step 10. What thought? The step 9 amends and the promises that we experience as the result of doing them. So technically, if you've gone through this, what they're saying is you're at home reading this with a sponsor. You've read through 9. You haven't done 9 yet. You have a list. And you're reading through it. It's like your manual for your driver's license. You read how to operate the vehicle, yet not operating the vehicle yet. But when you're operating the vehicle, you'll know what to expect when you see these things. That's why they hit all those different areas in your 9. And they're saying as you go through your 9, you'll be amazed before you're halfway through. Well, that means that this thought brings us to step 10. And then it says our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness because we just entered the world of the spirit, this consciousness, and the world around us. That means when somebody phones or I end up in a place, there's a reason for me to be there. And God knows what that is, or this power, or this source. Like somebody showed up in your life. If you looked at the time somebody showed up in your life, they got a call and met you at a place you didn't know you were going to meet them at. But they already knew they were meeting somebody to do something. And you showed up, went, hi, and they went, hello. How many here is here as a direct result of somebody else's effort to improve your life? Yep. Oh, yeah. We're his agents, right? He's the father, we're his children. Most good ideas are simple. Yes, okay, I'll go do this, I'll go do that. And then the most remarkable things happen. So they talk about we've just entered the world of the spirit. Page 85 is ideas. They're giving us new ideas here that these thoughts must go with us continuously. They talk every day is a day we must carry the vision of God's will in all our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine. These thoughts must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along these lines all we wish. It's the
proper use of the will.
Do I know how to do that yet? No, they haven't showed me, because they showed me how to master resentment, outgrow fear, right? They had me to bring my conduct into alignment with hopefully the life that I'm hoping for. I have a list of the people that I harmed. I just did 6 and 7. I'm prepared to look at this stuff, but I can't go it alone. And I got to be careful because they say that by this time, that's why they talk about there's a couple months, right? But we're under an act of providence. God's got us. But this miracle really hasn't happened yet because I haven't done my 9. Just because I'm reading 10 doesn't mean 10's happening. It's a byproduct of a demonstration of these things. I'll be amazed before I'm halfway through. Halfway through these things that used to cripple me. And so it talks about it's easy to rest on our laurels. That means feel-good sobriety. I'm feeling good. That must mean I have this thing. Anybody been there? Mistaken feeling good for feeling better for getting better? Remember, we deal with alcohol. Remember, you can't remember. Oh, man, now I remember. Too late. Here's your chip. Okay, so... Right? We're not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a contingent on my relationship with me. As long as I'm plugged in with me and I'm checking in every day. Oh, no, it doesn't say that? Sorry. Oh, hang around that person that's handing out 24 hours at a time and taking it. Oh, no, not that either. Look, sorry, I can't help that. We hear this chanting and it's not like, come on. It's all about my relationship. If I'm going to survive me, how well have I done so far? Welcome to AA. Welcome back. How you doing so far? Not bad. Court's Monday. So hopefully she comes back. Hopefully she leaves. Hopefully, it's some condition, right? I got problems. We know. How do you know I got problems? You're involved. Okay, sorry. Okay, so it's easy to let up on a spiritual program of action, rest on our laurels. That means no other achievement seems necessary because I feel I've achieved everything I've hoped on. They're saying, whoa, you're in trouble. When you start thinking like that, you're in trouble. 30 years later, I know I have a daily reprieve. From what? That death sentence, right? And the warden is not the warden per se, is my relationship with God. I don't get to determine every day whether this sentence gets imposed or not. It's removed. It's removed so long as I keep spiritually fit. Does that kind of make sense? It's not even in my hand because I'm not qualified to deal with alcoholism before the steps or after the steps. We don't apply these steps to alcoholism. We have a treatment for alcoholism. We don't treat alcoholism. Wow, man, that was deep. We admitted that in step 1. It's beyond your pay grade to deal with this. So if the problem doesn't get removed, what's our fate?
Doomed.
We're doomed. We're going to be doomed again. But as the result of this psychic change or spiritual experience, does it say, do you understand? No, I experienced it. No further explanation is necessary. Right? Having had. Every day. So what happens is, let's read the last part here. Much has already been said.
Bottom of 85. Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from Him who has all knowledge and power.
True or false?
True.
Yeah. If we've carefully followed directions.
So if we've carefully followed directions, that means I'm at a new point in the whole purpose of this. That means if you're talking to somebody, if you've carefully followed directions, you should be here. And if you're here, you can move on. If you're not here, we need to backtrack to find out why you're not here. This is the pivoting point to the whole thing. If we've carefully followed directions, they're giving us a new idea here, right? Remember, they started the conversation. Every day is the day we must carry God's, right? Thy will not be, it's proper use of will. I don't know how to do that yet. They're saying, well, if you've carefully followed directions, we're going to take you to second phase recovery. If you're not here yet and you're still overly focused on self, step 10, it says watch for these things. It didn't say concentrate or work on. Big difference. You listen to most people in step 10. If you're having to do step 10 every day, you're missing something. And what you're missing is step 11. If you're doing step 11, you're doing the 10 previous steps. If you're doing 10, you're not doing the purpose of the process. And what's the purpose of the process? To work on you?
Improve your conscious contact.
Keep this connection with power. Because as my power supply diminishes, it's like your phone. Anybody get panicky when you're on the last bars? We should have that on our foreheads. We kind of do. We kind of do because when your friends go look at you, go oh. You go what? You're running low, buddy. You're running low. You better get plugged in soon. You go, oh, thank you. Right? You remember that card? You know that game with the card? You put the cards on your head. You can't see. You think, oh, I got it. Ace of spades is 2 of diamonds, brother. Anyway, sorry. I can't help it. I don't know where to go with this. Okay.
So good.
So we get the, okay.
We've begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. To some extent, we've become God conscious.
Wow, eh? That's the whole point. We confirm what they talked about in the 5th step. This energy, whatever you want to call it, when you're right here. You know, when you're right in here, you know you're right in here. When you're not right in the chest, when you feel pain, anybody ever feel the pain that shoots out of there? It cripples you, bucks you over. You ever notice when you're in a lot of pain, you don't grab your head? You don't go, oh, put your both hands on your forehead, oh. You go, ah, like the chest just buckles you over and you got snot running out of your nose and you've knocked the air right out of you. And then your friends look at your forehead, go, oh, sorry. Okay, oh, okay, go ahead.
We've begun to develop this vital sixth sense, but we must go further, and that means more action.
And that's how we read that. But we must go further, it means more action. But we must go further. Must. How you think they're trying to say something there? Right? So it's like being on the Titanic. You don't see the water anymore. You're 3 floors up. It says, don't hear no noise. And they're screaming, you got to keep going. This looks all right. This room looks way better than my other room. How long till... Because we deceive ourselves. They're saying, hey, you need to get on another vessel. You need to get a whole new experience. You need to get off the vessel that you're in. But I don't know how to do that. So the spiritual thing is they talk about. So here's the food for thought. If you look at step 11, it's the only step that we have is a 24-hour clock. 24 hours. And if you go to page 88, we alcoholics
are undisciplined. Not me, though.
What are they talking about? Mentally and spiritually. We're undisciplined. We let our mind determine to us how we think and feel. Anybody thinking shit today? How many people had front row to that? Anybody get irritable when somebody tries to interrupt that? Or try to give you a solution to it? But you don't understand. Yeah, the bars on your forehead are running low. Yeah, we understand. We can hear. We keep each other accountable. That's why some people call it spiritual consent. Us and kind of calling bullshit for what it is. Have you been doing the work? No? How you feeling? Like shit. Do the work. Well, I'm dealing with some stuff. Then get some outside help. Can you do the work? Never stop doing the work. Because when we stop doing the work, then alcoholism gets back to work. Remember, we're not cured. What we have is a daily reprieve from alcoholism. As my spiritual condition subsides, alcoholism starts coming back. And I can't see, feel, and touch it. Because I felt really good and drank. And I feel like really crap and drank. So I can't depend on me to keep sober. So they talk about here, we're undisciplined. So what does it talk about as the recipe to that?
We alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined.
Just outlined. This, I heard the speaker once. Oh, that means 10, 11, and 12. Does it say 10, 11, and 12? It says just. I just told you. Anybody ever have that? I just told you, not have been telling you. My God, what's the matter with you, child? I just told you. Anybody have that? How many people don't understand? I just told you. You did it again. I just told you not to touch that. And you put your finger in it. I just told you that was for your sister. I know. How many people understand what just means? And have been? So when they use just, what does just mean? Just. What did they just outline? Step 11. When we retire at night, we review our day to see the obstacles in today that I need to look at tomorrow. Because if I'm unspiritually fit today, it'll show up, won't it? In people, places, and things. My interaction with people and myself. Right? So now they're saying here, let's review it and then ask what corrective measures should be taken spiritually to build up or so I'm non-reactive, and then as we go through the day we pause. This is if you read step 11, it has all the principles in this to have us having a different experience before the car accident, not after the car accident. Because if you're doing step 10, guess what step you're not doing?
11.
You're not doing 11. If you're doing 11, guess what step you're doing? You're doing all of them. And if you're doing 11, it's no longer about the steps. If it's still about the steps, you're missing something. Whoa. Whoa. Huh? Whoa. Wow.
That's so good.
So read 11 this week and see where maybe somebody's wrong. We close with a great meditative prayer for those that wish to cover all the principles as suggested in step 11 that we utilize just on Tuesday nights. We close with the Lord's Prayer. Whose Father? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thy is the kingdom, power, and glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.